All right, let's jump right into this explainer and explore a place where the line between absolute visual beauty and, well, instant death is completely blurred. I mean, you might think you're looking at a digitally created landscape from some sci fi movie, or maybe an alien planet way out at the edge of the galaxy. But nope, this is a real place right here on Earth. It's called Dallol, and it's a hydrothermal crater hidden deep in the interior of Ethiopia. But as we're going to see, Mother Nature isn't putting on this colorful light show for our amusement. Actually, scratch that, she is actively warning us to stay away. So you look at these vibrant neon yellows and bright greens, and it looks like a gorgeous alien painting, right? But we are going to peel back that deceptive contrast today to reveal how this beauty is actively trying to kill you. Because these aren't patches of natural vegetation or harmless algae. What you're looking at is a lethal, highly pressurized cocktail of pure acid, sulfur, and toxic gases. So the big question is, how on earth did such a nightmarish chemical environment form on our planet? Okay, so to really grasp the extremity here, we first gotta look at the geography. Dallol sits completely isolated within the Danakil Depression over in the Horn of Africa, and at minus 130 meters, this land is sunken deeply below sea level. Because it's geographically trapped like a bowl and surrounded by intense underground volcanic activity, the Earth here is literally baked from the blazing sun above and simultaneously boiled by the magma churning directly below us. Picture the absolute hottest, most miserable summer day you've ever experienced, and then strip away every single bit of shade. That is the baseline here. 45 degrees Celsius isn't a freak heat wave, it's the everyday reality. Just for context, that's around 113 degrees Fahrenheit every single day, year round. It is hands down one of the hottest average environments on the planet, and the heat bouncing off these bright, endless salt flats creates shimmering mirages, which kind of adds to the illusion that you're walking through a dream, right before the environment completely overwhelms you. Now, that gorgeous glowing water we just talked about, it's a trap. It is actually a hypersaline sulfuric acid mix. This liquid has a salinity 10 times higher than the ocean. But worse, the pH level actually drops below zero. That makes it infinitely more corrosive than the battery acid sitting in your car right now. If you were to just casually dip your hand into one of these vibrant pools, your skin and flesh would blister and dissolve in seconds. But wait, the danger isn't just in the boiling pools on the ground. It's heavily concentrated right in the air. Invisible gas pockets of chlorine and carbon dioxide violently erupt from the earth with zero warning. Migrating birds that just accidentally fly over the crater hit these invisible oxygen-starved pockets and suffocate mid-flight. Explorers regularly find their undecayed, mummified bodies crusted in salt, scattered across the ground. They're perfectly preserved because, get this, not even the bacteria required for decomposition can survive this toxic air. You know how science usually tells us that life always finds a way? We hear about extremophile bacteria surviving inside nuclear reactors or deep in frozen Antarctic ice. But a 2019 French-Spanish study proved that Dallol is the ultimate exception to that rule. When they tested the absolute most extreme pools here, they found zero DNA, zero microbes. The lethal combination of hypersalinity, literally sucking the water out of cells, and flesh-melting acid destroying their proteins, forces biology itself to surrender. It's a true 100% dead zone. And this total absence of life actually creates an incredible astrobiological puzzle. Space agencies like NASA heavily study Dallol precisely because it's a perfect replica of ancient Mars. If we're trying to figure out if life ever existed in the ancient evaporated lakes of the Red Planet, Dallol serves as our baseline test. Because think about it, if life absolutely cannot exist in this chemical nightmare right here on a life-abundant Earth, finding it in the incredibly harsh ancient environments of Mars is going to be unimaginably difficult. And that despite these ridiculously lethal conditions, human ambition actually tried to conquer this toxic wasteland. Let's look at how that incredible arrogance played out in the early 20th century. Which brings us to Section 1, a ghost town built on hubris, the Italian potash mining experiment. So back in 1918, driven by the desperate need for World War I explosives and agricultural fertilizers, an Italian mining company decided, hey, let's extract potash from Dallol. They built an entire settlement out of actual salt blocks and even laid down a railway line. But within months, reality hit hard. The hypersaline acidic air began aggressively rusting their expensive iron machinery to dust. The workers suffered terribly, inhaling these burning sulfuric vapors in 50-degree heat. Yeah, by the late 1920s, they just had to admit defeat and throw in the towel. The extreme heat, the total lack of water, and that heavily corrosive atmosphere simply made industrial survival a mathematical and physical impossibility. The companies fled practically overnight. Today, all that's left are crumbling salt block houses and skeletal, rusted-out train cars just melting back into the toxic earth in what is undeniably the most isolated ghost town on the planet. Moving right along to Section 2, the Afar tribe and the white gold, surviving where modern machinery completely failed. So, while the European mining companies and all their advanced machinery fled in total defeat, an indigenous group known as the Afar tribe walks right into this 50-degree Celsius furnace every single day. And they aren't there for potash. They are hunting for white gold, which is salt. Just below that acidic surface lies an ancient salt crust hundreds of meters deep. The Afar chop this hardened crust into very precise, uniform rectangular blocks called amole. Centuries ago, these very blocks were the literal official currency across the entire Ethiopian empire, and today they remain a vital, albeit insanely dangerous, economic lifeline for the tribe. Let's talk about how brutal this harvest actually is, because the daily process is just grueling. The Afar people manually extract the Earth's riches without any modern protective gear. No gas masks, no cooling suits, nothing. They use wooden axes because, as the Italians learned the hard way, iron rusts away instantly here. They hand-cut the crust at 50 degrees Celsius, shape the emoli with their bare hands while toxic sweat stings their eyes, load hundreds of these heavy blocks onto camel caravans, and then endure a punishing 2 to 3 day trek across the blistering desert just to reach the nearest market. Their sheer human endurance and physical adaptation are honestly just astounding. The Afar follow a really rigid code of resilience, basically viewing any complaints against nature as a weakness. They absolutely prove that where heavy, expensive industrial machinery crumbles into useless rust, traditional survival techniques and sheer human willpower can actually carve out a living right on the very edge of hell. All right. Final section, the monster underground, the geological truth of Dallol. So, what is actually powering this endless, massive supply of salt and boiling acid? Well, we have to look deep beneath the surface to find the true culprit. See, Dallol isn't just some flat, static desert. It is a highly active hydrothermal system. Millions of years ago, this entire area was the floor of the Red Sea. When it eventually evaporated, it left behind salt layers that are kilometers thick. Today, subsurface magma rises unusually close to the Earth's crust right here, boiling the pressurized groundwater. This superheated water dissolves that ancient salts and sulfur, erupting right onto the surface. So Dallol is essentially acting like an open, bleeding wound to the Earth. But wait, the magma is just a symptom of a much larger, much crazier event. The true monster hiding beneath the bare feet of the Afar miners is the East African Rift. Specifically, Dallol sits right on top of a triple junction. This is the exact point where 3 colossal tectonic plates, we're talking the Nubian, the Somalian, and the Arabian plates, all meet up and violently interact. The Earth is literally, and I mean literally, ripping itself apart in 3 different directions right beneath Dallol, at a speed of several millimeters every single year. The continent of Africa is physically splitting in 2. And because the ground here is constantly stretching and thinning out, the entire Danakil Depression is being pulled deeper and deeper down into the Earth's mantle. And here is the staggering conclusion to this massive geological conspiracy. Dallol's days are numbered. As the plates continue to pull apart and the land sinks further, one day in the geological future, the natural mountain seawalls holding everything back will finally fail. And when they do, the Red Sea will violently rush in. This entire acidic, colorful, toxic hellscape, along with the ghost towns and the salt flats, will be completely buried beneath millions of tons of water, eventually becoming the floor of a brand new ocean. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this provocative thought. We've seen how Dallol easily destroys bacteria, how it rusts our greatest machines to dust, and how it pushes human endurance to its absolute breaking point. Yet, the Earth itself is preparing to just casually erase this entire landscape to build a new ocean. It really forces us to pause and ponder our temporary and incredibly fortunate existence on this dynamic, ever-changing planet. We are kind of just lucky guests hanging out in the habitable zones. Keep that in mind next time you step outside and take a deep breath of fresh air. Thanks so much for diving into this fascinating source material with me today. Keep exploring,